Welcome to a story not for the faint of heart. Picture this: a retired man, a peaceful woodworking shop, and then bam! A stranger in a HOA police vest kicks down the door, demanding to erase all evidence of fraud. But what he doesn't know is that the old man isn't alone. If this story feels like a real-life action movie to you, drop a comment below. What would you do if someone targeted your family? Would you stand up or stay silent? We want to hear your voice. I never thought I'd have to fight to protect my own laptop, right inside my woodworking shop. But that morning, when the door was kicked open and a man stepped through like he owned the place, I knew things had spiraled far beyond control. He wore a black polo shirt with HOA police printed in bold across the chest, an absurdly fake title. But there was nothing funny about his face. That was Derek Nolan, the loyal enforcer of Karen, the fake HOA president who had been manipulating our entire neighborhood for nearly a year. In his hand was a piece of paper that looked official, but after 30 years as an auditor, I didn't need long to recognize a forgery. "Samuel Whitaker," he barked. "Under Clause 15C of the Community Regulation Code, I am authorized to seize any devices used in violations against the HOA. Hand over your computer, now." I stood firm in front of the oak workbench, where my laptop sat, holding all the financial evidence exposing Karen's $400,000 fraud ring. "You're trespassing on private property," I said, my voice calmer than the pounding in my chest. "I'm asking you to leave, now." He didn't say another word. He charged. He slammed me back against the bench, hard enough that my spine jolted with pain. A picture frame hit the floor, a photo of my late wife, Eleanor, shattered into sharp shards of glass. It felt like he had torn through the last memory I'd been holding onto for 5 years since she passed. "You think you're clever?" he growled, reaching for the laptop. "I'm going to wipe everything, and you'll lose it all." I lunged to stop him, ignoring the stabbing pain in my back. But he was bigger, stronger. He shoved me again, harder, and this time I hit the floor. Then, a voice thundered through the workshop. "Take your hands off my father's computer, now." Logan, my son, former U.S. Marine. Broad shoulders, muscle-bound under a plain t-shirt, eyes sharp as steel. Derek turned, trying to play it cool. "This is HOA business. Interfere and there will be consequences." Logan stepped forward, voice steady and low. "All I see is a trespasser assaulting my father on private land." Derek lunged, but he never reached my son. In a smooth, practiced motion, Logan pivoted and slammed him face first into the floor using flawless jujitsu. Derek's arms twisted behind him, body locked down, completely immobilized. "This is called positional control," Logan said, like giving a lesson. "I'm not hurting you, but you won't be hurting anyone else either." Derek thrashed and shouted, "I'm an HOA official. I'll sue you for assault." "I'll help you with the charges," Logan replied coolly. "Unlawful entry, impersonating authority, assault, attempted destruction of evidence, theft, all in under 2 minutes. He applied a bit more pressure, just enough to make Derek scream. I was still on the ground, gasping for breath. But inside, I knew the war had just entered a whole new phase. I used to believe that Oak Creek Estates was life's final gift to me after decades of relentless work. A quiet suburban neighborhood where people still greeted each other in the mornings, where children's laughter echoed on warm summer afternoons, where I could sit by my woodworking shed on the weekends undisturbed, save for the sound of birds and the scent of freshly cut wood. My name is Samuel Whitaker. I'm 58 years old, formerly a senior financial auditor at a multinational corporation. 30 years spent tracing numbers, exposing fraud schemes worth hundreds of millions. That job made me sharp, cold, and difficult to deceive. But it also cost me dearly: time with family, quiet evenings with my wife, birthdays I missed just to finish one more report. When Eleanor, my wife, passed away from a sudden stroke 5 years ago, I nearly crumbled. This house, this neighborhood, this little workshop I built in the backyard, none of it meant anything without the memories of her. Eleanor was meticulous, principled, and firmly believed in the power of clear documentation. She used to say, "Paper doesn't lie, Sam. Record it, store it, and someday it might save someone." I never knew who she meant back then. Now I do. We chose Oak Creek Estates for its peace and stability, a place fit for the twilight years, a place where people like me could finally exhale and live in the moment. The HOA fees were reasonable at first. The board seemed friendly, and the annual meetings were so dull they made me feel secure, because in my line of work, when things get too interesting, something is usually very wrong. Then came Logan, my son. He returned home after an injury during training, a 22-year-old Marine, carrying both experience and that 1,000-yard stare I'd only ever seen in war survivors. Logan didn't talk much, but every movement was deliberate. The way he scanned the fence line, the windows, as if he'd never left the barracks. We were never the sentimental father-son type, but his return brought life back into the house. Footsteps, breathing, the rhythmic thumps of his jiu-jitsu drills on the lawn. I joked about it once. He shrugged and said, "Gotta stay sharp. Never know when you'll need it." I didn't realize at the time whether it was a warning or fate whispering in advance. And then there was Karen, a name I once associated only with dry HOA meetings and petty complaints about mispainted fences. But ever since she became president of the HOA, everything started to change, slowly and with surgical precision. New rules, strange new fees, vague threats hidden behind legal jargon. The entire neighborhood began to go quiet. Eleanor once warned me about silence. She said, "When people stop asking questions, something has died, either the truth or trust." I should have paid attention earlier, but I was too busy picking up the broken pieces inside me until the shove from that man in the HOA police shirt reminded me, peace isn't always real, and sometimes you have to rise up to reclaim it. It all began with a plain white notice neatly tucked into my mailbox. No explanation, no vote, just a cold declaration. The HOA fee would double, effective immediately. I'd seen my fair share of foolish financial decisions in my career, but this wasn't foolishness. This was intentional, and I wasn't the only one who saw it. The next morning, I found Mrs. Doris Kane, 72 years old, trembling on my doorstep, holding the exact same notice in her hand. "I can't afford my blood pressure meds this month, Mr. Whitaker," she said, eyes red. "If they make me pay this, I'll have to choose between my health and my home." This wasn't about numbers anymore. This was criminal. I called the HOA office demanding an explanation. They transferred me to Derek Nolan, freshly appointed by Karen, as the Community Compliance Officer. His voice was raspy, like a cheap speaker. The increase was a collective decision approved by the board. There is no appeal process. Have a nice day. A nice day? When they had just robbed dozens of families of financial security? I decided I'd attend that month's HOA meeting, and I wasn't going alone. The room was packed, more crowded than any previous meeting. People stood in the hall, leaned against walls, faces taut with anger. I saw Doris. I saw Frank and Linda Delaney, both retired police officers. I saw the eyes of people who knew something was seriously wrong. Karen entered in a charcoal gray blazer, her smile thin as a razor blade. "We're so glad the community is engaged," she said, taking her seat with the smugness of someone who believed she'd already won before the battle began. Then she let Nolan take the floor to read the new budget. He spoke quickly, hiding behind vague phrases like security enhancements, landscape improvements, and emergency reserves. I raised my hand. She ignored me, so I stood anyway. "Ladies and gentlemen," I said, my voice firm, each word slicing through the silence. "I reviewed the financial statement released last week, and I have a few questions." I projected the data on the screen. $45,000 for landscaping with no signed contracts. $80,000 for security equipment, yet not a single camera was ever installed in the neighborhood. No one laughed, no one spoke. Karen's face began to harden, and Nolan stepped forward like he was ready to drag me off the floor. "Mr. Whitaker is misinterpreting the fundamentals of community finance," Karen cut in, forced and brittle. I looked her dead in the eye. "I've investigated over 200 corporate fraud cases in my life. I know what it looks like when someone's hiding money." The room shifted. I could feel it. The neighbors who once sat quietly began murmuring, and as I stepped down from the podium, 6 people came up to shake my hand. They didn't say much, just one phrase, repeated again and again. We need your help. That night, the first unofficial investigation group of Oak Creek Estates was born, right in my backyard workshop. We didn't yet know what we were up against, but I knew one thing for sure. Karen had crossed the line, and she was going to regret pushing us this far. I used to think arrests and intense confrontations only happened in case files or on TV. But that night, sitting alone in my workshop, flipping through folders, forged invoices, fake contracts, wire transfers funneled through 3 shell companies, I knew one thing. By morning, I would no longer be just a retired man. We had found the network. $400,000 disappeared in just 8 months, routed through companies with no employees, no offices, just P.O. boxes. Offshore accounts appeared with encrypted ownership. And when Tina Alvarez, the county records clerk, traced recent foreclosures, we discovered 3 properties had been bought by a firm named Oakstone Holdings. Owner, Karen. This wasn't just fraud. It was a coordinated property takeover. We decided to call an emergency community meeting to present the evidence, expose the numbers. I began building a presentation. Logan, my son, watched the yard like a hawk. He practiced jujitsu every afternoon, but this time it was different. He was training for an intruder, because we both knew if Karen realized we had uncovered her scheme, she wouldn't sit quietly. 3 days before the meeting, Logan got an alert from the door cam. Derek Nolan was outside our home, holding a thick folder, arguing with someone in a car. "I don't care how you do it. Just get those files tonight," Karen's voice hissed through a recording Tina had secretly captured. "If this gets out, you and I both go to prison." As the recording ended, Tina called me. "Derek just left the HOA office. Told the secretary he's going to your house to investigate unauthorized business activity." I didn't waste a second. I backed up every file to an encrypted cloud drive, something Eleanor once insisted I install, though I never saw the point. Now, I silently thanked her. Logan stood at the door of the workshop. "I'll handle it," he said. I shook my head. "No, this is my fight, but stay close." Gravel crunched under tires outside. I hit record on an old voice recorder, Eleanor's birthday gift from years ago. "Never meet someone you don't trust without recording it," she used to say. That advice now felt like a shield. The door burst open. Nolan stepped in like he was with the FBI. Black shirt, HOA police, emblazoned across his chest. But his eyes, they weren't fake. They were desperate. "Mr. Whitaker," he barked, "I'm conducting an emergency inspection under Section 15C. Hand over your computer, now." I stood in front of the table. "You have no warrant. This is private property. Leave, now." He stepped closer. "We know about the cloud backup. Give me the password, right now." A chill ran down my spine. They'd been watching us. Wiretaps, hidden devices. Before I could react, he lunged, knocking me back into the table, shattering Eleanor's photo frame. I felt blood trickle from a shard of glass in my hand. He reached for the laptop. Then, footsteps behind him. Logan stepped in, silent. In one smooth motion, Logan pivoted, gripped his arm, and slammed him face down onto the floor. Shoulder locked, legs immobilized. Nolan screamed, cursed, struggled. Logan calmly applied more pressure. "I'm not hurting you," he said evenly, "but I'm not letting you hurt anyone else either." Then, the unmistakable wail of police sirens outside. Nolan froze. Logan leaned down, voice low and steady. "You better start praying. The cops won't be as gentle as I am." I pulled myself up, breathing hard, eyes fixed on the shattered picture of Eleanor, and I made a promise to myself. By tomorrow morning, the truth would come out, and this time, no one would stop it. The next morning, as the first light of day spilled through the wooden-framed windows of the workshop, I stood in front of my laptop like a man about to walk into a courtroom. Every piece of evidence had been meticulously organized into slides, from forged invoices and shell company wire transfers to the recording of Karen's voice, commanding someone to deal with me at any cost. Logan helped me build a financial summary board, every dollar, every transaction, leaving no room for doubt. I wasn't going to the community meeting as a speaker. I was going as a witness to an organized financial crime. The firestorm had spread so fast the meeting was moved from a small HOA room to the community gymnasium. Nearly 300 people showed up, They weren't just neighbors anymore. They were witnesses, victims, a force waiting for the truth. Karen arrived just as she always did, composed, confident, always 2 steps ahead. But this time, she couldn't control the room. When I stepped up and projected the first image, a legal document listing her as the owner of Oakstone Holdings, the room fell completely silent. I began. In the past 8 months, over $400,000 in HOA fees has been funneled through a network of non-existent companies. These companies are all managed by the same group of individuals, and they all lead back to one person, Karen. I pointed to the flowchart of money transfers, then to the list of foreclosed homeowners, then to Oakstone's property ownership documents. And finally, I hit play. Karen's voice rang out clearly through the speakers. If this gets out, you and I both go to jail. The room erupted. Murmurs turned into a wave of outrage. People stood, shouted. An elderly woman broke into tears. I said nothing more. I didn't need to. Frank Delaney, retired police officer, stepped onto the stage. "We've let her manipulate us for too long," he said. "But now, enough is enough." Then, Financial Crimes Inspector Mason Grant stepped forward to the mic. "We've been tracking this for months, but it was Mr. Whitaker's documentation that connected all the dots." He paused, locking eyes with Karen. "This isn't just about Oak Creek Estates. We're talking about 4 other neighborhoods, all using the same model: property takeover, offshore laundering, and buying up foreclosures for pennies on the dollar. Estimated total, over $1.2 million. Karen tried to leave. No one moved. The police stepped forward, and in the quietest moment of the morning, silver handcuffs snapped around her wrists. "You're under arrest for financial fraud, money laundering, abuse of authority within a nonprofit, property extortion, and willful falsification of community records." Karen screamed, "I did it for the good of the community." A resident calmly replied, "No one calls it good when you steal a widow's home to buy a Mercedes." I stepped off the stage. My hands were shaking, not from fear, but from the weight of finally, after so many years, being in the right place, at the right time, doing the right thing. Logan waited for me in the hallway. He placed a hand on my shoulder. "I've never seen you speak like that before, Dad." I looked at him. "I never thought I'd have to in my own neighborhood." Everything changed after that meeting. I thought that once the truth started coming out, Karen and her cronies would retreat quietly, like criminals who know the knock on the door is coming. But I had underestimated her. Karen didn't retreat. She struck back. 2 days after the meeting, a piece of paper slid under my front door at 3 a.m. No envelope, no signature. Just 8 words, typed in bold with an old typewriter. "Mind your business, or lose everything." I stood frozen, staring at the message. Logan came into the kitchen and saw my hand shaking. He took the paper, read it once, then looked at me, not like a son, but like a soldier switching into combat mode. "We need to check every inch of our security perimeter." When Logan went out back to check the camera wires, we found something chilling. Every surveillance line had been severed, clean, surgical, no torn edges, no messy cuts. This wasn't kids messing around. This was professional. "Not vandalism," Logan muttered. "This is tactical." I asked, "You think it's Karen?" "Not who. What?" he replied, eyes locked on the backyard gate. "This is an operation. They're playing for keeps." That night, I noticed a black SUV parked 2 houses down, headlights off, but the blue glow of a screen flickered inside. They didn't knock. They didn't need to. Their message was clear. We're watching. The next morning, Karen publicly announced the implementation of an emergency security protocol across the NAE. Every home would be subject to structural safety compliance checks by a special HOA inspection team. Any violations could result in fines or forced compliance. I recognized the tactic, classic diversion, create a fake crisis to bury the real one. That afternoon, Frank Delaney, retired from the organized crime division, showed up at my workshop with a USB drive. He'd obtained a recording from Frank Barnes, a maintenance worker at the HOA office. "In the recording," Karen said, during a closed-door meeting, "we need to get rid of the accountant before he ruins everything. Derek, whatever it takes." I don't want to see him at the next meeting. I felt a chill run through my spine. This wasn't intimidation. It was a direct order for elimination. We began preparing for war. Logan installed hidden cameras throughout the property, especially in the workshop, where all the evidence was stored. I set up multiple backups, one on an encrypted cloud server, one on an external hard drive, one printed and hidden at Tina Alvarez's house. And then, as if every warning had been a preview of what was coming, the cameras recorded Derek Nolan himself creeping around our home at 1:47 a.m. He checked the windows, tapped the workshop doorknob, then disappeared into the darkness like a ghost. Logan watched the footage, his grip tightening around a utility knife. "We're out of time, Dad," he said. "They're done threatening. Now they're planning to act." I looked at my son. In his eyes, I saw two worlds converging, the calm discipline of a Marine and the raw fury of a son protecting his father. I took a deep breath. Then we moved faster. If Karen wants a war, she'll get one, but this time, it's going to be on the side of the law. That night, we didn't just reveal the truth. We illuminated a nightmare, one Karen had carefully cultivated in the shadows. The emergency community meeting was moved from a small hall to the multi-purpose gymnasium. There were simply too many residents demanding to attend. They didn't come out of curiosity. They came because, for the first time in years, someone had the courage to speak aloud what they had only whispered behind closed doors. I stepped onto the stage without a title, without credentials. I came armed with the truth, printed in data, evidence, and a fury that had been simmering inside me for nearly a year. I didn't start with introductions. There was no time for pleasantries. My name is Samuel Whitaker, and I know that Karen has stolen over $400,000 from the very people sitting in this room. A ripple tore through the crowd like a small storm. I clicked to the first slide. A flowchart appeared, tracing HOA funds through shell companies, roundabout accounts, and finally landing at a company named Oakstone Holdings. Owner, Karen. Next came the property records, showing homes foreclosed after sudden spikes in HOA fees, then quietly bought up by Oakstone for 60% below market value. I pointed to the chart. This is how a community gets taken from within. No weapons, just signatures. From the crowd, Mason Grant, the county's financial crimes investigator, stood and spoke into the mic. "We have launched an independent investigation. The data Mr. Whitaker uncovered matches patterns in 3 other communities. Preliminary damage, over $1.2 million. Before I could continue, a voice broke through. Janice Monroe, retired schoolteacher, a woman I once helped draft a response letter to the HOA, stood, her hand trembling but firm. "I nearly lost my home because of her emergency fund," she said, pointing directly at Karen seated near the back. The room erupted. Then Frank Delaney stood up. "We've heard the recording of Karen ordering someone to deal with Mr. Whitaker. This isn't community management anymore. This is organized crime." I played the recording. Karen's voice filled the hall. "Get rid of that accountant before he screws everything up. I don't care how you do it." The room fell silent. All eyes turned to Karen. She stood, pale, still trying to control the narrative. "This is fabricated. This is a smear campaign." Then Tina Alvarez stepped forward, holding up a file folder. "Every document shown tonight has a verified duplicate stored here, time-stamped and sealed by the county office." Karen broke. The once untouchable woman, the self-proclaimed guardian of order, was now surrounded, trapped in a ring of truth and accountability. And just then, the front doors flew open. Officer Caleb Rhodes entered with 2 deputies at his side. "Karen, you are under arrest for financial fraud, abuse of authority, and conspiracy to unlawfully seize civilian property." Karen tried to step back, but there was nowhere left to go. The people rose to their feet. No one cleared a path. No one looked away. I didn't feel triumph. I felt peace. As if, finally, Eleanor could rest, knowing that the whispers she always suspected had been dragged fully into the light. Logan stood beside me silent. He nodded once, and I knew. We hadn't just taken down a Karen. We had saved an entire community from the cancer hiding behind a mask of order. Karen's arrest was just the tip of the iceberg. As the doors to the gymnasium shut behind her cuffed wrists, I knew this wasn't victory. This was only the beginning. That night, I was invited to an emergency meeting at the County Department of Justice with Inspector Mason Grant and a representative from the State Attorney General's office. They had been monitoring several shady HOAs, but none, they said, were as sophisticated, systematic, and cold-blooded as what we found in Oak Creek Estates. I opened my laptop and presented the web of connections between 4 infiltrated HOAs, along with a list of 17 shell companies Logan and I had traced over the previous 2 weeks. No real addresses, no real employees, just names like Greenwave Solutions and Civic Guard Holdings, designed to sound legitimate but hollow as spent casings. And just like a missile launched into the heart of corruption, the clean sweep operation began. Within 48 hours, search warrants were issued for 3 HOA offices, 5 offshore entities, and a real estate investment fund in Nevada, used by Karen and her associates to launder funds. Tina Alvarez, with her sharp eye for record-keeping, was recruited as a document analyst for the task force. Logan volunteered as a community security consultant, helping identify neighborhoods with similar fee structures and signs of unlawful enforcement. The residents of Oak Creek Estates, once silent, once fearful, now became eyewitnesses. They lined up at the community center to sign affidavits, provide documentation, and even hand over threatening emails from the so-called HOA compliance unit. We didn't just remove a Karen, we dismantled the entire machine that stood behind her. 3 of the main shell companies had their assets frozen. One of Karen's co-conspirators was arrested trying to empty a joint account in the neighboring county, and the entire HOA legal advisory group that had helped disguise their transactions was permanently dissolved by state court order. Within 10 days, a coordinated fraud ring across 4 neighborhoods was brought down, and over $1.6 million was either recovered or frozen, pending legal action. I looked at Logan, sitting beside me during the final press conference of the operation. In front of us were dozens of microphones from local and state media. "Do you consider yourself a hero, Mr. Whitaker?" a reporter asked. I just smiled. I'm just an old man who can count and hates injustice. But if you're asking whether we'd do it again if we had to, the answer is absolutely. When justice is buried beneath uniforms that masquerade as authority, silence becomes complicity. But when one person stands up, just one, the truth begins to speak. The story of Samuel Whitaker and his son, Logan, isn't just a battle against a fraudulent HOA. It's a testament to a deeper principle. In any community, evil wins not because it is powerful, but because good people surrender their right to question and their duty to speak out. Karen didn't dominate that neighborhood because she was clever or powerful. She did it because apathy gave her room. Only when Samuel dared to question, dared to confront, dared to shine a light into the shadows, did the wheels of justice begin to turn. One of the most profound lessons here is the value of transparency. In a world where financial decisions are made behind closed doors and announced in sterile newsletters, it's easy to overlook the details. But the truth lives in the details. Samuel wasn't a superhero. He was a retired auditor who could read a spreadsheet, and he used that skill to save an entire community. The story also highlights the power of unity. Karen thrived when residents were isolated and hesitant. Logan represents a new generation, brave, disciplined, and fiercely protective of what matters. He didn't just defend his father with military skill, he stood beside him through the legal battle, proving that courage isn't about who hits harder, it's about knowing what's worth protecting. And then there's Eleanor, the late wife who, though physically absent, left behind wisdom that proved invaluable. Always back up, always stay alert, always prepare. Her foresight preserved the truth. She represents the quiet vigilance every citizen should carry, even when not on the front lines. The greatest lesson of all: truth doesn't need weapons to win. It only needs one person willing to keep it alive, long enough for it to speak for itself. If this story made you reflect on justice, truth, and how one ordinary person can change an entire community, don't leave in silence. Like the video, subscribe to the channel so you won't miss the next story, others who need to hear it. Did you resonate with Samuel? Admire Logan? Feel outraged by Karen? Leave a comment below, whether it's praise or criticism, because your voice matters. we rate every single one.